Hi, everybody. My name is Joshua Vonderheid, and I'm the founder of the Percussion Conservatory. And I'm so excited to be having our very own Stephen Kehner with us today for a percussion story. Stephen is the assistant principal percussionist of the Oregon Symphony. And today we're going to learn a lot about Stephen and about his passion for music and his passion for percussion. And we're going to learn all about his story. So, Stephen, thank you so much for being here. And I just want to get us started right away talking about your early musical background and your first experiences with percussion. And I also love to know, when did you first know that you wanted to be a percussion major or a music major?
Well, yeah, thanks, Josh, so much for having me. Working with the Percussion Conservatory and Josh to develop this series, Percussion Story, has been really, really fun. And it's one of my favorite parts of the platform. So I'm super honored to be able to be a guest today. My early musical background. So really, it goes back to growing up in a house where my dad sang and played the trumpet in the house a lot.
Nice.
Like he would literally play, like Reveille in the mornings to wake us up sometimes. And he was in a rock band in college, and he always sang 80s music. And just, he's definitely the musical force in our household, not a professional musician, but just very, very musically inclined, great ear, great rhythm. So that's kind of the initial, roots of it all, going back in my childhood. My first experience with percussion is I had a neighbor up the street growing up who had a drum set, as many of us do. And hey, this is cool. Check this out. And just starting to learn some basic patterns and really liking it. And then getting some lessons. This is probably fourth, fifth grade, somewhere in there. And parents, oh, you might like to be a drummer, or at least learn how to do this. Like, so yeah, the age old story, like one Christmas morning, you come down and there's a, beginner drum set there, like, as a surprise from Santa or whatever. And, and that was they're very much my story. So going through fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, middle school was very much about, and just drum lessons in general, and then getting involved with like the public school band program. Where I grew up was Marietta, Georgia, which is in the northwest suburbs of Atlanta. If you're familiar with this area, it's just an incredible kind of hotbed of like kind of public school support for the arts, particularly music. It's similar to Texas, which Josh knows extremely well, in that like the public school music programs and the marching band scene in particular is like massive. It's very much like that in this part of Atlanta. So as I was getting closer and closer to high school, I was becoming more and more aware of drumline, what marching percussion is, and all of that entire world. So that kind of, led me to join the high school band, which was a very, very good high school band. My freshman year of high school, we went to the Macy's Day Parade in New York City and marched in that, in the Rose Bowl Parade in Pasadena, in the same, those are about a month or so apart because it's Thanksgiving and then New Year's. So that was like right off the bat, I was however old you are when you're a freshman in high school, 15 or something, and like literally traveling across the country with my band, high school band, big drum line, playing a marching bass drum, the Rose Bowl parade's 5+ miles. I mean, it was an intense experience. But that only made me like it more. I just wanted to do more and more and more and get to know it better and better and better. I would say I first wanted to know when I wanted to kind of pursue it seriously as a career or major in it in college or something of that nature, when I got linked up with Charles Settle. I was a high school sophomore, I think, at the time. And I was looking to get a little more serious about, concert percussion and studying mallets and kind of everything, having to do with that. And Charles was a section percussionist of the Atlanta Symphony at the time, and he was quite young. I want to say he was probably in his late 20s in those years. And he was just a great mentor for me. And I studied with him for the rest of my time in high school. I was going down to his house in Atlanta almost weekly, even kind of throughout the summer sometimes. And yeah, getting into Bach, getting into xylophone rags, and getting into all those things that, we start to learn when we get a little more serious about kind of, concert classical percussion. And so that opened up a whole other world, which I didn't know much about, which is orchestral playing. And that's what Charles was doing. And, I remember just, I would go down on a Tuesday afternoon or something and, oh, how was your day? And, what'd you do today? And, well, I rode my bike into the hall and played some Rachmaninoff for an hour and a half. And then I, rode my bike to a coffee shop and met up with a friend. And then I came home and walked my dog and just, and I'm just thinking as I'm getting closer to college and like, that sounds like a really nice life, a really nice lifestyle, just
Yeah.
very balanced and very not this kind of 9 to 5 grind in an office or, things like that. I just thought this is, a really cool kind of different alternative life. You don't see, living out in the suburbs and just people's parents, what your own parents do and other people's parents do. You're kind of looking at all that and maybe I want to be a doctor or whatever. And I just was never, none of that ever appealed to me, like going in and sitting in front of a laptop or something like all day, every day, just like, no, that's not for me. So this very much appealed to me, like being in an orchestra. That kind of spurred me to want to study it seriously in college. And Charles was such a great mentor for getting you through. I mean, that the year at the end of high school when you're trying to audition for colleges is so intense, as all of us know. And you don't know what's going to happen. And am I going to get in anywhere? Especially for me, like not having grown up around this or not really knowing many other people who wanted to do this sort of thing was, I remember later my parents telling me like they used to, after we had gone to bed, sit up and talk at night and, like, is he going to be okay? Like, what if is he good? We don't know. Like maybe he's really good. Maybe he's not. What if he gets rejected from every school he applies to? What are we going to tell him? Because my parents were very supportive of, because they didn't know anything about this either, but very, very supportive. Anything I needed, if I had sticks or mallets, they were always supporting me and coming to concerts and being really enthusiastic about it, which was so great. I mean, that's so essential. And but little did I know behind the scenes, they were just terrified that I would just experience this kind of crazy rejection and not get in anywhere. And my dreams would be crushed and they would have to pick up the pieces or something.
Yeah, that's so funny. I have such a similar experience. My parents were both music educators, so they did know a lot about music. They knew that it was very competitive and that it was very tough. And they told me flat out after I had gotten into undergrad, they said, I mean, we're very happy for you, but we did not think that you were going to get it. Like, I mean, they were just like super straight up. They were like, we are just relieved. We are very, very relieved. And I always thought that was so funny because at the time I was like, oh, I'm doing this, like for sure. I'm going to make this happen. But and that turns out the whole time. So maybe your parents as well, the whole time, they're just like biting fingernails, So I think that is a common story that we do here, but thank you for all the parents out there who are supporting. And I think that's a perfect segue as we're talking about getting into school for Stephen. If you could give us an overview of that percussion training that then happened, and like your prominent teachers, schools you went to, the festivals you've gone to, anything that you feel like was an important part of your growth process and becoming a professional.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's difficult to even quickly encapsulate all the different experiences and all the important people that come into your life at a certain time that you need and open your perspective to something different and an experience that you really needed, or whether positive or negative. It's tough to even kind of summarize all of that stuff. But so I ended up going to college at Florida State. The connection there was that my high school percussion ensemble had done some pretty big performances when I was in high school. And in my senior year, we performed at PASIC. We won one of the high school showcase slots to perform at PASIC. And since Florida State it's in Tallahassee, if you're not familiar, that's the panhandle of Florida. So it's about 5 hours from Atlanta, Georgia, driving. For all of the great public school art support in Atlanta, there isn't really a great music school for college, in the area. UGA is up in Athens. That's a little bit outside the city. It's very music education focused, and there's some other smaller schools, but Florida State is a massive music program. It's one of the top 5 music programs in size in the nation. And since that's about 5 hours away. And Dr. John Parks was a teacher there. And our high school director said, hey, it'd be really great to have him come up and coach the percussion ensemble and get us ready for this big PASIC performance. So he did that. I think he came up twice or something to help us prepare for our showcase concert. If you've never met John Parks, just an unbelievable force of intensity and musical knowledge and skill and dedication. And so when you're in high school and you're really kind of, we're preparing this big performance, and then he comes in and he knows everyone's part, he knows exactly how everything's supposed to go, just kind of blows you away with like, I couldn't even make a small mistake, a small miss note without him. I know you need to play that better the next time. I mean, just really, really, really intense. And that's what I took away from it. It was like, wow, he, like, as a teacher, like, I can't, like, that's what you would need, right? Like, I would really want somebody who's on top of it and pushing me really hard. So that's what I walked away from it from. And then when it came time to audition for schools, I was like, I had to audition there, and I got a really nice scholarship. And he recruits. He talked to me a lot. We were in kind of constant communication, and he really wanted me to come. And that impacts you when you're 18 years old, if somebody's really saying, I really think you'd be a great fit here, I really think you should come here, and really selling you on it. And that worked. And I was like, great, yeah, I'll go there. So I went down to Tallahassee, and I spent 4 years at Florida State. I did a performance degree, which was fantastic. And towards the end of my time at Florida State I found myself in this kind of crossroads. I really was drawn to the university kind of lifestyle, being like a college teacher and seeing what Dr. Parks did. And then he would bring in other people like Jim Campbell from Kentucky and Blake Tyson from Central Arkansas, and some of these other people, and the kind of lifestyle they had of like a percussion studio of students that you teach, and being able to play chamber music with other faculty members, and having this nice academic calendar where you have your summers off, and this sort of thing. It's like, wow, this is really cool. And it's, again, like, has a lot of balance and a lot of interest and a lot of variety and all these things. So I was really drawn to that, and I applied to Indiana University for my master's. And I was kind of thinking, okay, if I go to Indiana, like, that's probably college teaching route. There's some really Kevin Bobo and John Tafoya, and there's some really great people who would really help me a lot if I want to go that route. I think that would be a really good option. But again, I still had this in the back of my mind, the orchestra thing. I don't know if I'm good enough, but that would really be cool if I could get into an orchestra. That would be kind of amazing. And so I also applied to MSM and NEC and Boston University and some of these other schools that are a little more orchestral focused, with symphony orchestra players, big names, your Chris Lambs and Will Hudgens and Tim Jennis and these. And I was like, okay. So yeah, I ended up getting into Indiana, and I got into NEC, and I thought, okay, I kind of have a decision to make. Like, this feels like I need to decide now, even though I'm 22. It feels like I need to know, like, if I'm going to go heavy on the audition route and try and get an orchestra job, or if I'm going to be a university teacher. I need to kind of do one or the other now. And for a number of reasons. I also, right after college, I got married. And so that was playing into it. It's like, where my wife and I are going to live. Does it make more sense for us to live in a college town or a big city like Boston or New York or something like that? And she was much more interested in that. And I said, well, I got into NEC. That must mean I know something about playing, and maybe I could be in an orchestra if these orchestra people think I play well enough. So yeah, ultimately it was like, okay, let's go to Boston and go to NEC, and let's try out the orchestra path. So but I hadn't taken any professional auditions outside of regional community orchestra stuff in Florida and things like that. I really did not have a lot of kind of professional audition experience going up to NEC. So I went up there and I joined Dan Bausch's studio. He's the assistant timpanist in the BSO. And Dan was just sort of getting started. He had only been teaching at NEC for a few years and had been in the Boston Symphony for 5 to 10 years or so. So fairly young. I felt this had been a common theme for me. I really resonated well with these kind of younger teachers who were kind of fresh off of their own successes in the industry of getting their jobs, and had a lot of energy and a lot of passion and a lot of, I really thrived kind of in that relationship I found. So Dan was a great fit and broke down my technique. If you think I have a music degree now, I'm really good at this. And all you need to do is just go, be playing for a Boston Symphony musician every week to go oh no, I don't know, I have to start over. That's literally how I felt. I mean, we were doing Dan, I remember Dan was doing Joe Morello book, molar stroke. He was you don't know, molar, we have to rebuild your snare drum technique and I was just oh my, I thought I was going to start taking auditions right away, that sort of thing. So Dan was really great because he really took it back to square one and built back this whole technique and approach to playing the instruments. I was like, wow, like I really needed that. So by the time the end of my master's came around, I was really starting to take a lot of auditions, and feeling comfortable and getting those first few advances and things like that that help your confidence. I did some great festivals in there too, particularly my time in Boston. I did the Schleswig-Holstein Festival, which is in northern Germany. If we have any of you like kind of conservatory guys who are watching, they usually come and they hear auditions in Boston and New York, maybe Chicago, but just kind of those maybe Eastern Seaboard cities every year. And they usually take a couple American, they do a good job of kind of spreading it out. They usually take a couple of Americans every year. I was really lucky to get in as an alternate. I think like my first year, my master's, spent a couple weeks in Germany, getting to play in like some really cool halls in like Hamburg and Denmark and like, crazy, and getting to experience like what a European audience does and how they react to the music is very different than an American audience, and the depth of knowledge that they have for the music over there. And again, like, and more things, the more it's one of those things that the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know and you want to keep learning. And that just deepened my, I want to be in an orchestra. I want to be in an orchestra. Really, really cool. The Music Academy of the West was in there as well. An awesome festival in Santa Barbara. I think most of our viewers will be familiar with that one. Mike Werner and Joe Pereira now teaches it, I think, but it's fantastic. Kind of full summer, 8 weeks, very intensive, lots of chamber music, great orchestra programs, great conductors and soloists, and not to mention beautiful Santa Barbara and surfing and all of that stuff too, which I know
It's a good
Josh
one.
is
It's a
familiar
good
with.
festival for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are, and that's because like the summer can be such a, everyone can kind of use the summer months when you're in school. Like it can be like this trampoline, or it can be this like black hole. Like if you really just let the summer slide by and the semester ends and you just slide into summer, you don't really have anything going on. You don't have any plans. Maybe you're hanging out around home. You go home if you live far away from school or whatever, and then you come back in the fall and it's like, oh, you're almost behind because you've just fallen off of that level that you need to be on like while you're in school. So the festival thing is so great because it like obviously it doesn't allow that, and it just puts you in this environment with other great players who are your age, with great teachers who are able to offer you a different perspective than your own studio teacher back at your school, and all these things. And those were always so key for me to like link the school years together. Of like I would come back to the next school year after having been away at a festival and feel like I wasn't having to play catch up or start over. I was like, wow, I've just gained all this experience, and now I'm starting from an even higher place. I have more knowledge and more. I've been practicing all summer. I've been away at this festival. So yeah, I think those experiences are so key. But it also can be good to take a summer off here and there and just practice, stay home and practice. Sometimes that can be the better thing too. So I don't think there's like some rule like you got to be in a festival every summer or else you're gonna get behind. It's not like that. Obviously they can be really, really great.
What you're supposed to do is watch every single percussion conservatory
Yes.
masterclass in the summer. But actually, I mean, to be honest, that is such a good use of percussion conservatory. Is, let's say you audition at all those festivals and maybe you're auditioning for some really high level ones and they don't pan out. Now you're totally covered. You can have an extremely productive summer either way. And as you're saying, Stephen, it can be very, very healthy just to take some time off, or to take 1 month off and spend the rest of the time practicing super hard. I was in festivals just about every summer, and it did feel relentless and extremely tiring for a little while. And I didn't really take a summer off until I became employed. And then I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened in my life. I've got 4 weeks off, and so that was very beneficial for me. But I do want to jump now forward in time, so that you don't have to brag about yourself because Stephen's resume is phenomenal. And he was a member of the New World Symphony. He joined Utah for a year, and then he got into the Oregon Symphony. And he's just had tremendous success early on in his percussion career, although he'll tell you that it took him a zillion billion auditions to achieve such a thing. So it wasn't without grit, but in the grand scheme of things, he achieved a lot of success quickly. And one of the other things that he's been able to accomplish is a more recent venture that he's become a really, really successful content creator. And so I wanted to show a clip of our best performing YouTube video of all time from none other than Mr. Stephen Kehner.
Sherazad by Rimsky-Korsakov has long been a repertoire staple for orchestral percussion, mostly due to its challenging and famous snare drum part. But today, I want to highlight the tambourine part, which is also technically demanding, but less commonly studied or asked on auditions. You have a lot of options as a performer when preparing this part, from instrument choice to position you hold the tambourine. If you're playing this part in the orchestra, your choices may depend on how fast a tempo the conductor chooses, the acoustics of the performance space, or even how your sound blends with the instruments the other percussionists choose to play. If you're playing this in an audition, your choices should be dictated by whatever gives you the cleanest and most consistent performance. Whenever possible, I try to play the tambourine up, around shoulder level, so that the sound projects above the orchestra and out to the audience. I also use a combination of hand-knee technique and two-handed playing when the rhythms and tempo become too quick to play up.
So that's a great little clip. You can watch the whole video on our YouTube channel, and Stephen has a number of other videos that he's produced just like that. And so this has become part of your teaching experience, your educational experience, your giving back to the world experience. And so I wanted to ask you, Stephen, that, you've become such an active contributor and volunteer at the PC. And I'm genuinely curious, and I think I know a little bit, but it'd be great for you to tell the members just why, why did this particular project catch your eye? And for those of you who don't know, Stephen is our events manager and our artist relations manager at the PC. And he is my right-hand man. He does so much work for us in terms of keeping things running smoothly. The PC legitimately would just not exist without Stephen. And so if you didn't know that, now you know. And so I want to know why, Mr. Stephen, why have you decided to get so involved?
Yeah, so Josh built this entire thing. That's another thing that maybe I think people don't realize. I was actually just talking to a friend in the industry, and the PC came up, and this friend commented like just how amazing the site looks and how well designed it is. And when I told them that, I was like, yeah, Josh built all of that himself. They were like, people don't realize. So also big props for literally just teaching yourself how to build a website and then building an awesome one. Cause that's what, that leads me to why, it impressed me when you built it initially, because I was like, oh, like how much did you pay for someone to build this? Oh no, like you just invested the time and the resources to figure it out. So that was incredibly impressive. And then the other thing is the timing of it was obviously the pandemic. And everything went virtual, as we all know. And people may not know that. So the timing of my career was just kind of ironic and crazy. But the audition in which I got the position I have in the Oregon Symphony was in February 2020. We're coming up on about 4 years ago, to the day almost. And obviously, about a month later, the entire world went. The Oregon Symphony then was furloughed. No performances, no work, nothing for about a little over 18 months from that point. So it was a very long layoff, and a lot of that was due to the local restrictions here in Portland were very, very stringent, and we don't own our own hall. And so the city mandated, what could be open and what kind of events could happen and what couldn't. And it just made it impossible for anything to happen here. While other orchestras and other groups were firing back up and, we'll do some live streams with nobody in the hall, or we'll have people in the hall and space them out and all that stuff. We did none of that, like literally at all. So from winning the job in February 2020, my first notes with the orchestra as a member were in September 2021. That, left this huge void as far as like artistically and just musically, like the longest layoff obviously any of us have ever had, but me in particular, just, yeah, I mean, a really, really long time without actually doing what I had been doing, like for a decade, basically, like since being a student. Yeah, suddenly here comes this message from Josh, like, oh, I built this website. Like, what do you think? Like, what would you do with this? Or what do you want to be involved in any way? Or, and you and I had met when I played with you guys in Malaysia a few years prior to that. So we had a little bit of a relationship already. And I was like, oh, I'm like, I'm at home, I'm just hanging out. And I would love to find some kind of outlet to get my hands moving again and get some creative energy flowing again and just something, and like, and also feeling very much during the pandemic, like, wow, like it would be really great to like do something that feels useful and meaningful and helpful to students. I mean, I can't imagine being like 18 or 20 or something and the pandemic hits and like your half your college experience is wiped out by this global event, or you just delay going to college because it's pointless. I mean, it can't, like, so for all of you guys who had to deal with that, I mean, like, and you're still doing it, like immense props, because I mean, there's just a crazy unprecedented time. And it just took a lot of dedication to get through to the other side of that. So yeah, so the PC really offered this outlet where I could, okay, like this will, and I wanted to get, interested in like, how do I record myself and how do I make a video and all these kind of things. And it gave me an outlet to try some stuff. So yeah, I just started, making a few things for the YouTube channel, a couple classes with a studio residency, and it's just become clear as the platform has grown, like how impactful it can be, and the thing that's really different about it from anything else is just like the global reach of like being able to translate all of these things, all these videos, like through, whether it's through YouTube or through Vimeo, being able to translate it into all these different languages. And then you have subtitles. And if English isn't your first language, like you can quickly just hit a button and start viewing the content like in your own language. I mean, that's massive. And that's the way that our world is going in so many ways, in the business world and everything else. And like, so for percussion to have a space in which that's possible, I think is really, really cool. And then the artists that come in, which you and I talk about a lot, like who can we get onto the studio program, and trying to for that to be global too. Like, Ed Choi, for example, in Seoul has been a massive supporter and just massively involved in the whole thing as well. And that's really cool for it to be literally the other side of the world, in Korea. And his whole studio is watching these things and they're benefiting from it, and they're applying to the scholarship every year. I mean, being super involved, like that's really, really cool. And it's exciting. I've had really, really cool conversations with students in Australia, connecting with people in Europe and South America and Central America. I mean, so that element of it, and that's goes beyond like what a university or a conservatory could even offer, or should even. I mean, they want to serve the students they have. And so this is just this total other thing that, and I think you and I both feel that it's so much about like that accessibility. The exposure to great players and top professionals is usually only available to people who go to those top conservatories and universities and festivals and all of that stuff. And that feels like a real shame. That feels like a real loss of like, if we could just capture 3 to 4 hours over a residency of these people talking about and playing percussion and the topics within percussion that they're most passionate about and most invested in and most knowledgeable about, and be able to package that up and put it with all these other great things. And it just creates, as the kind of the archive that you've built from all of these classes, what a like deep well of information that can just is there at the click of a button. And that's how our culture and society works now. I want to be able to, they can jump around from class to class and compare things. And I mean, it's so, yeah, I think the global reach of it and the way that it levels the accessibility playing field is just completely unique, and that's what makes me super interested in it and super excited about what it can do and what it can be. And yeah, I think the funniest thing is like just every, like nutty idea or something that we've come up with along the way, like since you built the thing, is like more or less like come to fruition. You're
Yeah,
like, what if we
we've done a good job of yeah, that's right. We've done a good job. This came from Steven and also Steven's wife working at Nike. They had this thing, and I remember this so clearly the day we were talking about it, that it was called, blue skies thinking. Like, what would, if you could do anything you wanted to it right now, everything was just blue skies. It was perfect. This is exactly what you want. You could push a button and it was this. And I was like, I want people all over the world to be able to watch like some of the best percussionists in the world, and the whole thing auto generates like scholarships for everyone. And it's
Mm.
like, we did it, like that. I think that that's been a really, really exciting aspect of it, because when we very first started, actually before Steven joined, and this is why it's so pivotal that we brought Steven on, was when it very first started, it had a very different mindset for the platform. I thought everybody was going to have their own like portal, and we would all like kind of rent that person's portal. It's going to look a little bit more like a Patreon. And Steven and Kristen, his wife,
Right.
were actually the ones who were like, there's this different way that we could structure the whole thing that kind of achieves the same thing, and it would get more people involved faster, and we could get all these classes out, but we just have to like get people to play. Like, you have to get people to play live and do these classes. And we launched the back to school master class series, and we had these 5
Oh,
classes
that's right.
that everyone did to get back to school. And they were these 5 free classes, and it just exploded. Like, we just had so many people there for the size of the platform at the time and how many people came. And so
Mhm.
much credit just about the way that it all came together was very much Steven. So that's why I'll always say that for the rest of my life. Like, the PC wouldn't be the PC without Steven's contributions, and Kristen's. Actually, she's awesome. Your family's just intelligent, man. You guys got some bright people. But we got to keep moving. There's too many
No, very
questions to ask. Too many questions to ask, Steven. So the next one that I wanted to bring up was, if you could share a pivotal moment or an experience that shaped who you are today. And this could be about percussion or not about percussion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, as musicians, it's very difficult to separate like our professional musical artistic life from like our personal. It's very very much intertwined, and that's something that I think is it's two things. It's great because it's, for so many of us, your mission and your goals and everything's so aligned for us as artists. I think, like, for a lot of people, I guess, like, like your personal goals and your artistic goals are often going to be the same or related in some way. Like, for somebody who just clocks into some job they don't care about and then has their personal life at home, whatever that may look like, I doubt that that's much the case, right? Being an artist and living that lifestyle means that those things are going to be intertwined. The flip side of it is that sometimes it's tough for us to learn not to place our personal worth and value of ourselves as humans into our career because they're so connected.
Right.
And so that's where, music schools and conservatories and orchestras, professional orchestras, can be like dark places sometimes. Like, if people feel unfulfilled or feel that they haven't reached their potential or are frustrated in some way artistically and musically, that can play out in their personal life and a lot of nasty ways. Like, and I only say that from like personal experience. Like, that's, myself and friends and just, helping other people through it. But so this goes to the like kind of pivotal moment or experience that shaped kind of who I am now. This was probably during my time at New World. Perfect example of super intense place. Everyone's around the same age, very driven and very successful too, in that you're watching your friends and other people that you're there at New World Symphony with, like, win jobs and have these great successes. And if that's not happening to you,
Mm.
it really starts to mentally, like, it can get dark quickly. So that was kind of happening, like, where had been there for a couple years and had maybe some close calls at auditions and thinking, I'm ready. Like, I made a couple final rounds and things like that. Like, I'm ready to win one. Like, I'm getting tired of the audition circuit grind and just all of that stuff. And I'm ready for the next thing. I'm ready for the next step. And it not happening is really, really troubling and really intense. And during kind of one of those like dark, tough moments, one of our coaches, the New World Symphony, for those of you who don't know, like part of, and it's really an educational institution, and it's intentionally, the program there is designed to like develop the fellows and the symphony fellows from students into professionals. And a big part of that development is bringing in coaches of people who play your instrument, who have jobs in the industry. It's often orchestra players, not always orchestra players, but it's often, since it is an orchestra, it's often orchestra players. And the person who came in during one of these dark moments for me was Tom Sherwood. And Tom was very special because I grew up listening to him with the Atlanta Symphony. He was a principal for a long time. So my first experience is going to a concert hall and looking back in the percussion section. What are they doing back there? And I want to do that. That's really cool. And I've never heard it sound like that. Or what's, all those things when we first experienced like going to an orchestra. He was the guy doing all that stuff. Him and Charles as well, who became my teacher. So Tom was I knew him a little bit, but when he came down to coach at New World, by this point he had moved on to Cleveland Orchestra, and somebody who has a lot of knowledge and experience on this sort of mental side of percussion and music making and audition taking, especially somebody who had to take a lot of auditions and continued to take them even after he had won his job in Atlanta and this sort of thing. So the place that I was in, he was very familiar with, as many of us are. I know what you're feeling. I know how hard this is right now. But maybe the person who had the tools, who could tell me specific things like, do this, read this book, here are some ideas, watch this video. So he talks a lot. He talked to us, and it wasn't just me. It was all of us who were there, percussionists at that time. Yeah, he was just able to open my eyes to some things philosophically and spiritually, and just like to kind of like change my perspective on where I was at from a negative, dark, I'm not good enough, this is never going to happen for me place that we all know, to this like more positive mindset. He focused a lot on gratitude, like focus on the things that are good that have happened. A lot of good things have happened. Look at all these cool schools and festivals and things you've done. Like big part of his process for audition taking was having this inspiration sheet. And this is something I think he got from Jeff Nelson or one of these performance psychologist type people, and just basically writing down all the things you're happy about and proud of about yourself, like on a single sheet of paper. And the whole purpose of it was to like remind you to be yourself. Like being you is not a bad thing, basically. And what a concept. But like for somebody who's in a really tough place, like that can be like massively helpful. So yeah, that was one particular thing that he passed along to me. And I think it was just like, it was the right moment. It was the stuff I needed to hear at that time, kind of at that place of like, I'll do anything. I'll try anything. Like I've tried it all. Nothing has worked. Like I've gotten close. I don't know. Someone help, basically. And he was there and was really, really helpful. And yeah, so basically what I would take away from that and what I would want to share with our audience is like, there are now so many resources along these lines of performance psychology. And it's not even just like performance anxiety necessarily. It wasn't like getting jitters on stage was messing up my auditions. Like I, went and got a prescription for beta blockers long before, and that had been a non-issue for a long time. And I was very comfortable playing. It was more of like a deeper thing of like, I remember him pointedly asking me at one point, like, do you think you can win an orchestra job? And you're like, well, yeah, no. He's like, no. Like, I'm being serious. Like, do you actually like look down in here? Like, is it possible? Do you think it's possible? And I was like, oh, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure. Like,
Yeah.
So that was like, okay, like I really need to spend some time, thinking about that. What I needed to get out of it was like, I needed to find a purpose for being a musician and choosing this career and lifestyle that was like outside of winning a job. That was what I needed to find through all of that. Like, and then once I kind of zeroed in on that, like that really freed me up to, as far as like preparing for an audition and trying to win an orchestra job. I think it took a lot of the pressure and the stress and the uncertainty it just made it matter a little less. Like, I basically just told myself, like, I'm going to continue to do this until I get one. I now accept that it's not on my timeline, because if it was on my timeline, it would have happened years ago,
Right.
so let's throw that out the window. Like, who cares when it happens? But it was just funny because I swear, the moment I was like committed to that mentally, I won the Oregon Symphony job.
Dude, it's
Like
amazing.
the second. So, and that was just a really crucial person to meet at that time.
And, talking about this idea of sort of taking the plunge and going all in, when I was out in Malaysia, I had started the percussion conservatory. Things started to look like there might actually be something here. Maybe I should think about really, really pursuing this. And I got an email in my inbox from none other than Majestic Percussion. And Majestic, Nick Milliner, actually, they said, we've seen what you're doing with Percussion Conservatory, and we're really interested. We'd like to talk to you about it. For those of you who don't know, Majestic sponsors A Percussion Story, and they sponsor our scholarship. They sponsor the Percussion Conservatory. And so I had to make this decision about, okay, do I want to keep on playing here in Malaysia despite there was massive turmoil going on at the orchestra at the time, and I had gotten a contract that I wasn't super happy about, and I'm going to do this? Or they had said, listen, where you are in Malaysia, and it was still the pandemic. There was like shipping and logistics were like a nightmare and stuff. They were like, if you move back to America, we can really, really help you. They couldn't tell me exactly what was going to happen, but it was just this like, I had to make a judgment call, just like what might be possible. And they have been the most supportive. I don't think Percussion Conservatory in that moment, I don't think I would have had the courage to really pull the trigger and move back to America and bring my wife over here, who was not an American citizen, who actually just got her green card a couple days ago, which is an incredible news, like super exciting. And so I really owe Majestic Percussion a lot for supporting my personal career, but also for supporting Percussion Conservatory and making everything that we do there with our scholarship possible. They just gave away donating, sponsoring 3 snare drums for our scholarship competition this year. And those are on their way soon to all of our scholarship winners. So big thanks to Majestic. They make incredible instruments. They are massive supporters of percussion education. And Mr. Stephen Kehner just became an artist with Majestic. If you guys go on their page, you can see on their Featured Artist Friday that Stephen has just joined. And Stephen, I pass to you. How did you decide to make that plunge to become a Majestic artist?
Yeah, it is like just yesterday or something that the kind of official announcement went out about that. And yeah, I'm really, really excited. I would say my first awareness of Majestic and their brand and what they do and everything that they make was in high school. They became the percussion sponsor for my high school, which I told you about already, and very active percussion ensemble and marching band program, and providing instruments and the support I saw them provide. I mean, this is 2006, 7, 8, in that range. The support that they provided to my high school program was amazing. It was like, wow, where are all these instruments coming from? And what's this new drum line doing here? We already had a nice drum line, like stuff like that. It was like really incredible. And then, went to college and was very much in this audition mindset or whatever. And then only recently, with the kind of new snare drum line that's come out, they've developed with Chris Lamb, the Opus 1 series, there's kind of this like renewed interest and energy brewing with orchestral players about this brand. And yeah, Josh actually was really, really helpful in introducing me to some of the reps. We were at PASIC in November, and getting to play some of the drums and talk to them about what they're developing and working on, and talking to Chris about how he uses the drums on stage in the New York Phil. And it's actually kind of ironic because at the Oregon Symphony, we're kind of in this process of, we have this young, fairly new section of all of us, and there's this kind of need to improve, let's say, the percussion arsenal that the orchestra owns. We actually already own the full line of Majestic toms and use them all the time. They're really, really great. They sound really, really good. So we're really happy with the concert toms at the Symphony. And then, the snare drums will be the next thing. So that's what I'm excited about getting into with Majestic, getting some of their instruments on stage with the Symphony and seeing how they sound and seeing what we can use them for. But I've only heard really good things from you, Josh, and then other people who are already playing them in their orchestra jobs and really, really liking the results. So yeah, I'm super excited about it. And I don't want to say the instrument part is secondary, but it almost is, because of how supportive they've been of the PC, how supportive they've They've been of other educational initiatives like TED Cats and my high school program. I mean, just educating the next generation of percussionists is clearly such a high priority for them. And the way that they support and they throw their weight behind important things that are happening is like, it's unrivaled. So it's really, really cool. I'm really excited to see what the partnership can be.
Amazing, dude. And do not sleep on this marimba behind me on the single-sided crank. You have no idea.
Oh,
Like, I teach a lot of students here at home. Oh my goodness. It's ridiculous to have a single-sided crank. It's one of my very favorite things that I like
wow.
telling people about if you're not already familiar. But back to our regularly scheduled programming. Thank you, Majestic Percussion. Stephen, this is a very valuable part of the talk where we get to kind of dig into your head just a little bit and ask you some questions just about what you can offer to the young people out there, because you have gone through this so recently. You were just talking about Tom Sherwood and, having to navigate this emotional sphere and really get honed in, and then bam, it clicks, and all of a sudden, like, it's of course not overnight success. It's anything but it almost feels that way, right? And so you've done this recently. You've gone through this process recently. We would love to hear any advice that you have about students getting their career started or people their first year on the job.
Yeah. For students like getting your career started, I mean, think of that as like, I would really encourage you if you're starting out at in your kind of college, university level of your education, early on in that, like your career started. Think of it. And I say that because I didn't think that way. I think I thought, well, my career will start once I do this or once I do that or whatever. I wouldn't. I once you're in music, like full-time music school, whatever your degree program is, but you're full-time studying music, I like, consider your career has begun. You can already start playing gigs in town. You can play church gigs. You can play little theater shows. I mean, you can already start. I still remember my first like paycheck from playing percussion, and somebody handed me a check, and I was just like, mind was blown. I think I made like $150 to play a church service. It's, whatever. But like, I will never forget that. So again, like your career is underway. Your reputation and your artistic standards and your skills and abilities are already of use to society. Think of it that way, So your career has begun, and at the same time, like your education never ends. And that's the cool thing. I mean, about studying any instrument, but about percussion, because there's so many instruments, there's so many routes and paths and things to learn. Like it would be absolutely impossible to learn it all in a lifetime. No question. So that means like you'll never know everything, which is like, that's awesome. Like I think that's not stressful at all. That's really cool. That like that's a freedom to me. It's like it would be impossible. Like that means that I can just, whatever I might be interested in or whatever I might find appealing about something I know nothing about, I can just get into that and find out more about that. And especially if you're at that age where you're early in undergrad. I wish that I had done more in my college years of playing. I was already so focused on classical percussion, playing a percussion ensemble and orchestra and all that stuff. And I felt probably overextended just with that. But I should have like carved more time out in my college class calendar to do like salsa band and play like congas and timbales and stuff, and do like steel band, learn how to play a steel pan. We had all that stuff at my school. If that's a benefit if you go to a big university like a Florida State or a Indiana or a Michigan or any of these, Texas has tons of them, like great big universities that have all these different ensembles. Try to like explore some of that. Even if you did like one semester and you're like, not for me, still valuable. You found something you weren't that interested in. Great. That's still useful information. And you probably learned something. I would bet you learned something useful for your skills along the way too. So I wish I had done more of that. I studied all of that stuff in a theoretical way, like learning conga techniques and how to play all the Latin accessory instruments and some African drumming and stuff. But like, I never put them into context. I never played in musical ensembles for those musical styles. I feel like that was such a miss. And it's some of my favorite music to listen to now. And it's like, man, I wish I knew how to do that.
What a soundbite that we just got. Stephen Kehner and then quotations, and it's up on the banner in the classroom, because your career has already started and your education never ends. My goodness. My
Yeah.
goodness. From the
It's like,
mountaintops. Sing it. It's true though.
yeah,
It's very,
I
very
don't
true.
know. Yeah. Yeah. And then for somebody like first year on the job, like, whether it's, I would say, I mean, whether it's you're a teacher or you're a player of some kind, like in a band or an orchestra or something like that, first year, I mean, you always want to be yourself, and no one should. And if you find yourself in an environment where you're like discouraged from being yourself and being and expressing musically and in a like personal and social way, like who you are, that might not be the right spot for you. And so be open to that and be aware of those things. Like, you know, like my colleagues are wanting me to do like change who I am as a player. And it's just like, that's different than being able to adjust, which is extremely crucial. And that is maybe the number one, you know, so there's this thing of like, if you're in an environment where who you are, where you're starting to feel where who you are as a musician does not jive with the culture and musicianship of whatever group or institution that you're, you know, working in, that could be a problem and you might want to move on from that. But being able to adjust to your surroundings is like the most key crucial thing of like playing live music. And that's in a micro way of like being able to adjust to a tempo that somebody else sets. You may not like that tempo. It may not match up with the tempo you were setting 20 seconds ago, but now you have passed that to somebody else and you have to play with them. And as percussionists, we often, especially if you're in an orchestra or a large ensemble of some kind, it's very rare that we're like playing time the entire time, right? Like playing some kind of groove. That's like never happens. So we almost always have to take our time and our tempo, our dynamics, all of these elements from something that's already happening in the ensemble. So that means you're going to be adjusting all the time. And if that is a problem, like if you find yourself really struggling with adjustments, that's something you really have to focus on and work on. A really great exercise that I did with a friend of mine at NEC, who were in grad school together. This is Andres Pichardo. Awesome player and fantastic person. Now in the Detroit Symphony, and we practiced together a lot, especially leading up to New World Symphony auditions. And what we discovered was that a big thing we could practice was adjusting. And so we developed this system of flashcards where we'd be listening to each other and we'd play an excerpt, and then the person listening would just draw a flashcard out of a hat or a bucket. And then the flashcard would say like more leggero, or like more cool, or softer, or more like a clown, or underwater, or like so like some clear musical instructions, like it's too loud, play it softer, or like some very nebulous, like what does it mean like to play the xylophone like a clown? Now I have to figure that out, like because that could happen. You could conductors say crazy stuff, you know. So yeah, we would just do this. So it literally would be like Andres would play like Porgy, and then I would go like more leggero, or so, you know, more rubato, or, you know, whatever. Like it could be absurd.
Porgy,
Like you
right?
would never
Yeah.
play Porgy rubato, but then you'd have to
Yeah.
go like take a second and go like, all right, like how would I do that? You know, and then give it your best shot. And then what we would comment on, like obviously, like more often than not, you're going to probably butcher the next run. You're probably going to miss a bunch of notes and rhythms. Like it's not going to be. But like the point was like what we would comment on for each other was like, did we achieve what the note card said? Was it clear that we changed something in some way? Because that is the biggest thing, the biggest indicator. If you're able to adjust, somebody says, yeah, could you do that again? And XYZ a change about it. And you just do it the exact same way. That's going to end up becoming a problem as you go further along in your job, whatever it may be. It could be any job. So if you're in your first year, just starting out a job, like be aware adjusting is like even more important than nailing it the first time, or how clean your roll is or your rhythms are, whatever. All that stuff is details that probably only you are going to notice. But if you are not adjusting and lining up with other people who are playing, that people are going to notice. So that's what I got.
Very, very helpful and good answer, and valuable. And we're going to close today, Stephen, by just asking you a very wholesome and wonderful question for you to just kind of let us know what makes you so happy. What do you find the most fulfilling about what you do? Because literally of all the people I've met in the world who do percussion, and debatably in classical music, I have found you to be one of the most even keel, happy, well-rounded people. You have a budding family, and you guys find time to love each other and to spend time with one another. You're always talking about the projects that you're excited about. You just seem like your relationship with like yourself, with your music, with your artistry, professional life, your family life, it's just very healthy. And so I thought this would be a really good question to ask you. It's just, what do you find most fulfilling about what you do? And maybe to follow up after that, like just how you continue to find that joy that you've been talking about you've had since the Macy Day parade, right? Wait, was it
No,
Rose Bowl? Rose Bowl or Macy Day?
both,
Sorry.
both.
Both. Oh my, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. No, no, I super appreciate that, and it's helpful, and yeah, it's nice to hear that because getting caught up in the day to day. I do have two small kids at home. You know, still I'm in year 3 of the job, like kind of still learning how to do the job, and yeah, all that stuff is very difficult to balance, and the day to day is a lot. The schedule and the just keeping everyone alive is kind of crazy. So that's like I could do more to have a level of reflection of, you know, this is pretty awesome. And that it's, I'm very, very lucky to be in a section at the Oregon Symphony where it's something we talk about a lot, actually, just how lucky we are. If we play a really cool concert or something, we're like most of the time what we talk about afterwards is like, man, didn't we just like win the lottery? Like, isn't this awesome? Like that we just like got paid to play a Mahler symphony or something, you know, like that isn't like, let's just take a moment to say like, that's pretty cool. And no one is talking about like, oh, I don't know, like Steven didn't, that one crash kind of pocketed and the other thing didn't line up with the thing and the thing. And no one does that. All right, and that is really, really cool. And it's what I'm most grateful for and appreciative of the job I ended up with, is that it's the people that I get to work with. We just have this like awesome balance between like having high standards and wanting to play really well. And we all beat ourselves up when we miss stuff at work. Everyone misses things. It's just false. Like this idea when you're a kid or when you're a student that like all the professionals like nail everything all the time. Like it's not, it's not how it is. If you're playing shows every single week, you're going to miss stuff. Like it's going to happen, but we all have this level of like no one gets hung up on any of that stuff. Like we never get upset with each other for missing something or causing like making a mistake that causes someone else to make a mistake, which can happen. Like all that stuff that can just cause like resentment and disharmony, like within a musical unit that we are, you know, the percussion and timpani section. Yeah, it's and we do what's most fulfilling I think about the position I'm in now is that there's so much variety because we get to do what we do with the symphony, but then we also get to do a ton of awesome chamber music. Portland is this like insane hotbed of like chamber music projects. It's probably like oversaturated for the number of people that live here, like how much cool like new music and contemporary chamber music is happening like in the scene around Portland. A lot of it's driven by our colleagues in the orchestra. Like people have little ensembles and things that they run, and a lot of really, really cool projects happening all the time. And I wouldn't have time to create them myself. So it's really cool that I just get dragged in like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Like, can you do it? Can you play percussion on this or that? And that's been an unexpected and really cool part of, because what I was maybe a little worried about being an orchestra musician is like, well, does that mean it's just crash cymbals and triangle and like bass drum forever? Like, is that, I like playing in small groups too. And, you know, and the nice thing about here, at least, is like that hasn't been the case at all. Like every single year we're doing at least a couple of outside projects through our local chamber music, you know, programs that we have here, and they're really, really cool. They're really creative, and they're really like kind of community driven. The feeling of it is just like musicians playing stuff they want to play with people they want to play it with, and the audience can tell that. It's so clear. Like we forget that as orchestra players a lot. Like the audience can tell when people are having a good time doing what they're doing, and they're physically engaged, and they're bought in to kind of create something special. When it's everybody is just a statue and just kind of going through the motions, like, yeah, we forget that like people can see us when we're playing. But it's even more than just seeing. It's people can, there's an intensity in the sound and the energy of it that like is completely lost. So I think it's that all of the outside stuff like helps us always maintain like just a level of just like love for what we do, and we can bring that into work as well. And it's just like we're always even if we're playing a piece or a show that we just aren't a big fan of, which is going to happen actually this week in the orchestra. Like, I won't say who or what or whatever, but like, we are playing a piece that I just like, not a big fan of it. And that's going to happen, but it's never unpleasant because like, we're playing it. We always have the right mentality about it of like, okay, like, not a big fan of this, but like, let's give it our best shot and try to do a really good job with it. And we're going to have fun in the process because we're doing it together. Like, we're having a good time playing together. And that's like, if we're genuine about that and we're authentic about that, the audience absolutely can tell. And that matters a lot. Like, if we're not connected to our audience as musicians, it could be one person, you could be playing for one person, or you could play in a hall of 3,000 or 5,000 people or whatever. If you're not making that connection and your generosity as a musician coming through, you know, really like giving it your all, like, people can tell that. And it's way more impactful if you can find it within yourself to do that as often as you can.
Well, Stephen, you certainly make my job at the PC a lot more fulfilling. Getting to work with people like you is one of the biggest joys that I have in running the company. You make the PC a better place. You make your family a richer family. You make Oregon a better place and a better orchestra. And we are just so honored to have you be a part of our family here at the PC. And I can't think of a better way to end than just saying thank you to you for everything that you have done for me and my family personally, but also just for the entire percussion community. And we're really, really excited. You were just mentioning that you're going to get some new gear in and you're going to make some more content for us soon. So we're really, really excited to see more from you and all of the things that you have to teach us, because as good as you are at talking on this interview, I think you're even better at playing. It'll be really, really great to see even more stuff coming from you over the years. Thank you so, so much, Stephen. Would you like to leave our audience with any final words today?
Yeah, I mean, you're way too kind, and I appreciate all of that. And yeah, I thank you for building this awesome thing that we all get to enjoy and benefit from. And you know, whether it's the percussion story and this whole series, which we're going to continue to expand upon and have awesome new people coming in. And yeah, the studio and the app and it's incredible, all the stuff you've been able to build. So thank you.
We're doing it all together. The whole community is part of it, and it's not possible without everyone doing it together. So guys, if you'd like to be also involved with the Percussion Conservatory, if you would like to teach with us, if you're a professional, or if you'd like to be on a percussion story and share your professional journey about what's happened to you, that's who we have on. And you can get in touch with Stephen. He's the one who runs all of that for us. He is our artist relations manager. So Stephen, thank you so. You hit him up. Thank you so, so much. And it's been great learning about your percussion story. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Josh.
We'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye.
See ya.